Hi, I'm John Carvello, president of Stone Oak Capital and Divestopedia. This is our masterclass on selling a mid-market business. In this class, we're talking about strategic positioning and the preparation for the sale of a mid-market business. As always, I'm joined by my peers of world-class investment banking experts, Michael Carter, managing partner at Carter, Morse & Goodrich in Southport, Connecticut, Simon Davies, managing director at Spectrum Corporate Finance in the UK, Bill Snow, managing director at Jordan Knopf & Company in Chicago, Illinois. Simon, strategic positioning is so important at the onset of a sell-side engagement. Can you tell us about the different transaction options that are available to mid-market business owners? From everywhere from selling a business 100% outright to maybe finding a private equity partner to potentially selling just a minority interest. Maybe just talk about all of the options that are available there.
Yes, when we go and pitch to a business owner, we take them through the pros and cons of each of those options, and if they're looking to exit, then quite obviously they tend to think that it's just a trade strategic buyer that is their course of exiting the business and ownership. But there are many other different opportunities there, very much in terms of selling to a private equity investor. And sometimes you can sell 100% to a private equity investor if they then want to leave. But actually a private equity investor will also consider taking a minority stake in the business, helping you then develop the team, provide a succession plan, and then look to exit in 4 or 5 year time after that, but starting in a minority perspective. And what that does for the business owner, it gives them the chance to step away over a gradual period, whereas a trade buyer might want them to stay. But it also gives them a chance to have 2 bites of the cherry in terms of taking some value off the table now, today, to de-risk, and then some value later with the support and growth that the private equity investor will bring, and then exit at that point.
Bill, is anything you'd like to add to Simon's comments there? And then also have a question just around, the client's objectives and how important it is to kind of assess what the client's objectives are, sure, and then match those objectives to kind of the exit options.
Sure. Well, Simon is correct. I take umbrage with one comment. He said second bite of the cherry. That the term is second bite of the apple, Simon. Come on. One of the things that we're seeing, but certainly the strategics could be a good fit. Private equity could be a good fit. We're seeing a lot of development in recent years with family offices, which have been putting money into private equity firms. Sometimes private equity has a difficult time deploying that capital. So we've seen family offices, which are large pools of money. Someone has perhaps sold a business and created quite a bit of wealth and has hired professionals to manage that money for the benefit of the family. And we're seeing a lot of interest in these family offices to go direct into private companies. So instead of paying the fees to a private equity firm, these family offices are saying, we'll go direct. And the pluses and minuses there, the PE firm tends to be very concerted in terms of their effort in getting a deal done. They're very responsive. Family offices can be a great fit. They can be a longer term holder, but sometimes they're not as incented to get a deal done because they've got other things that are that they're working on. But that's something that we've seen. We've actually raised quite a bit of money in the last few years from some family offices for some ventures.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what are you seeing in terms of just the type of exit options that are available? And then, again, are there maybe some client objectives saying maintaining a legacy, maybe selling to a strategic buyer doesn't match that objective that the client might have? What are your kind of views on that you've seen through some of your engagements that you've been involved in?
Well, I think the 2 fellows covered selling to a strategic and selling to a private equity firm and a family office relatively well. The one that I would add that gets a lot of talk, we don't see a lot of it, but it's very, very tax advantaged, is selling to your own employees in the form of an ESOP, where the capital gains are deferred for, frankly, a long, long time. So that becomes, I'll just say, very tax advantaged, but a lot of times your employees don't have the capital. And so they're leveraging the purchase, and you're possibly helping them with some sort of financing as well. The good news is there's very easy reps and warranties, and so it's I'll say a safer transaction. But that's one that I would add to the list. John, are you looking for additional types of exits? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, definitely. And there's also kind of the MBO or management buyout, which kind of translate with the partner private equity firm as well. So, there's just so many types of options, and kind of looking to ask you, how do you match the right exit option to the client objective? So
that's a great question. So very often we ask what their objectives are, and the quick answer is maximize shareholder value. And then when you dig down deep into it, that's very often not the case. And so speed is very important right now at this moment on October 15th. A lot of people want to get a transaction done by December 31st or by January 21st, whatever the magic date is, to possibly avoid an increase in capital gains. If you're going to go speed, it's virtually impossible to do a sale to a strategic or sale to I'll just say an international buyer that needs a little more time. So speed is very often a key factor. The other one is legacy, making sure that your company just doesn't get gobbled up by a big corporation. And if you're, very, very committed to your brand, committed to and want to control that brand and want to make sure that the buyer is in line with your values, it's easier to, I'll say, work with one, possibly a private equity buyer that would share that. Bill mentioned family offices. We just had a meeting yesterday, and he said, my whole period is forever. And so that's something that a lot of people just don't want to feel their company is being flipped every 5 years. And so those family offices sometimes have longer time frames. So there's a whole host of things that go into finding the ideal buyer. I don't know about the other fellas, but we do a pretty good education, but very often there's pockets of buyers that we try to match up, not only financially, but also I think culturally, just a good chemistry fit. So.
Yeah, if I could jump in, Michael, completely agree with what you're saying. Great comments. And for us, it's the key thing is there's no right or wrong when a business owner wants to do something. And we ask them to think about their personal financial planning. What do they want to do with their career? What are their personal goals and interests? What do they want to do after work? What do they want to happen to the company, the legacy, the employees? A lot of business owners quite often have a kind of a paternalistic view of their employees. They care about them. They want to see them advance. And then we ask them to look at what's going on in the industry, any headwinds and tailwinds, and of course, any systemic issues. And the big one, of course, the virus we've had this year is a big systemic issue. So all of those things, we talk about those things, and we ask that business owner to think about what they want to do in the context of those things and try and come up with the right plan. Because the key thing is coming up with the right plan for the business owner and then finding the right partner to execute that plan, as opposed to a buyer coming in and looking to do a deal in a certain way and trying to retrofit that deal into what a seller might want to do. So the key thing is figure out what the seller wants to do and find the right partner.
Simon, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think they're fairly complete answers, and it's not just dependent on what he wants to do. It's dependent on what he's got around him to enable him to do it. So that is specifically succession planning and management team. And someone who wants to exit today, but they're a fairly autocratic business owner who's looking after sales, looking after finance, running the business, is going to find it quite difficult to step away from the business. So we have worked with business owners over a longer period. We've helped them identify and bring in management, and if that management is then in that role for at least 12 months, we've then been able to then look to sell the business to a private equity investor to take it on board, allowing the business owner to step away and giving that option for succession. So it's also having an eye around, are you able to walk away from the business, and how's that going to be perceived by any purchaser?
Yeah, I agree. I think matching the exit option to, what's realistic in the client's business, like you had mentioned, Simon, maybe there needs to be a deepening of the management team before you start talking to a private equity firm. So I think at the onset, that strategic positioning, that understanding of exit options versus client objectives versus what's realistic in the business is so important.